The night was silent, except for the ticking of an old clock in the small wooden house. The man sat near the fire, reading a worn-out book when he heard it. Something soft, almost like a whisper of movement. At first, he thought it was the wind pressing against the windows, but then he froze. The sound was inside. A creak of the floorboard, a faint breath, the kind of sound that only came when someone tried to move quietly. His hand slowly reached for the iron rod he kept by his chair. Living alone had taught him to be careful. He held his breath, his ears open, every muscle in his body ready. Another sound came, closer this time. Someone was in his home. He stood, step by step, moving in the shadows toward the hallway. The firelight behind him threw long, dancing shapes on the wall. He whispered to himself, "Who's there?" No answer, only silence. The kind of silence that made the skin crawl. His grip on the rod tightened. He stepped into the hallway. The door to the back room stood slightly open. He was sure he had closed it earlier. He pushed it open with the tip of the rod, and the old hinges groaned. The room was dark, but he saw movement, a small shape crouched in the corner. He almost swung the rod, but stopped. The shape wasn't large. It was not a thief or a soldier. It was a girl, an alien girl. Her skin was pale, with strange blue patterns running like veins under the surface. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn and filthy. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. He stepped back, confused. How had she come inside? Why? His voice was sharp. "What are you doing here?" The girl tried to stand but stumbled, her body weak. Her voice cracked as she spoke, almost a whisper. "Please, don't hurt me. I just want to wash. I'm so dirty. Let me wash." Her words stunned him. Of all things she could ask for, she begged only for water, for a chance to clean herself. He didn't lower the rod, not yet. His mind raced. She could be dangerous, or maybe a trick. Many stories were told about alien spies sent to fool humans. But when he looked closer, he saw her hands trembling, her knees scraped, her face streaked with dirt and dried blood. The girl stepped forward slowly, raising her hands in surrender. "Please, I cannot stay outside. They are searching for me. I will not harm you. Just let me wash. Just a little water." The man's heart pounded. His instincts told him to throw her out, to close the door and lock it. But something in her eyes stopped him. There was no hatred there, no cunning, only fear. The kind of fear that made her voice shake and her body collapse against the wall. He asked again, his voice lower now. "Who's searching for you? Why come here?" Her lips pressed together as if she carried a heavy secret. She shook her head. "Please, I can't say. If I tell you, you'll push me out. But if you send me away now, they will catch me. They will." Her voice broke and she couldn't finish. The man stood in the doorway, the firelight behind him glowing faintly into the room. He could hear her shallow breaths, almost see her heart racing in her chest. Everything about her screamed desperation. He thought of his quiet life, his long nights of silence, the way he avoided trouble. But trouble had now entered his house, barefoot, dirty, and begging. He moved closer, still keeping the rod in his hand. She didn't flinch. She looked at him with eyes that begged louder than her words. "Why should I trust you?" he asked. She pressed her forehead to the floor, her voice trembling. "Because I have nothing. No weapon, no family, no hope, only dirt on my skin and fear in my heart. Please, let me wash just once before they find me." The man felt his grip on the rod loosen. His eyes scanned the room, the shadows, the window. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of movement outside, a shadow crossing in the darkness. His chest tightened. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe someone was searching for her right now. He turned back to her. She had lifted her face again, and the dim firelight caught her tears. They traced clean lines down her dirty cheeks. Her thin frame shook from cold and fear. Something inside him shifted. Against his better judgment, against every instinct that told him to throw her out, he lowered the rod. But before he could speak, the sound came again. This time, not from inside, from outside the walls. Heavy boots pressing into the dirt. Voices low, speaking in a language he couldn't understand. Searching. The girl's eyes widened, and she pressed a finger to her lips, begging him to stay silent. The man's heart pounded louder than the footsteps outside. He realized this was no small accident. This was the beginning of something that could change everything. The man did not move as the sounds outside grew clearer. The alien girl crouched lower, her hands pressed against the floor, her whole body trembling. The whispers of the soldiers drifted through the cracks of the wooden house. He could not understand their language, but the tone was sharp, like hunters closing in on prey. The man's grip tightened on the iron rod again. He leaned toward the girl and whispered, "You brought them here?" Her eyes widened and filled with tears. She shook her head fast. "No, please believe me. They were already searching. They will not stop until they find me. I had nowhere else to go. I thought humans would not turn me away." He studied her face. She was young, maybe no more than a teenager, though it was hard to tell with alien features. Her skin was pale under the dirt, and her body looked weak, starved even. She didn't look like someone who could set a trap. She looked like someone who had already lost everything. The footsteps circled the house. A sharp knock rattled the wooden door. The man's heart jumped. He raised a finger to his lips and gestured for the girl to stay silent. He stepped quietly to the front, his bare feet making no sound on the wooden boards. Another knock came, harder this time. A deep voice called out in broken human tongue, "Open. Search. Just search." The man stood frozen by the door. He had two choices. If he opened it, they might tear apart his home and find her. If he refused, they might break in anyway. Behind him, he heard the faintest whisper, "Please, don't give me to them. If they take me, I die." Her words burned into his mind. He had lived alone for years, far away from war and politics, but now trouble had chosen him. He exhaled slowly, then shouted toward the door, his voice steady. "This is my home. Leave." For a moment, silence. Then the sound of boots moving again. They walked around the outside, their voices low and angry. He stayed by the door, every muscle tense. Finally, the sound of boots faded into the distance, swallowed by the night. He let out a shaky breath. His body felt heavy, as if the fear had drained his strength. He turned and walked back down the hall. The girl was still crouched in the corner, clutching her knees to her chest. When she saw him, she whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for not giving me away." He leaned against the wall, his voice sharp but quieter now. "You better start talking. Who are you? Why are they after you?" She lowered her head, her silver hair falling over her face. For a moment she said nothing, and he thought she would refuse. Then, in a trembling voice, she began. "My name is Lyra. My people, they live by caste. I was born low, worthless. When the war came, the soldiers took the highborn to safety. The rest of us were left behind." Her hands shook as she spoke. "But I am not useless. I know things they don't want me to say. That is why they hunt me. If I speak, I ruin them." The man frowned. He didn't know if she spoke truth or lies, but the fear in her voice felt real. "And you think hiding in a human's house will save you?" Her eyes lifted, meeting his. "Humans are different. They are not part of our war. I thought maybe you would show mercy. Just enough for me to wash, to feel clean before I keep running." Her words pierced him. She wasn't asking for food or weapons. Only water, a chance to wash away the dirt of her suffering. He rubbed his face with his free hand. He didn't want this burden. Yet the image of her begging on his floor, shaking and desperate, stayed in his mind. Finally, he spoke. "There's water out back, quietly. If they see you, I won't save you again." Her eyes lit up with a spark of hope. She nodded quickly. "I'll be silent, thank you." He led her through the back, every step slow, his ears alert for movement outside. The night was cold, the sky cloudy, and the air smelled of damp earth. He showed her the wooden barrel filled with rainwater. Lyra knelt beside it, dipping her hands in, splashing her face. The water turned dark as the dirt washed away. She gasped softly, almost like she was tasting life again. Then she leaned over the barrel, letting the water run through her tangled hair. The man stood a few feet away, keeping watch. He told himself he didn't care. He was just making sure she left after this. But his eyes kept drifting back to her. She looked fragile, yet beneath the dirt there was something different. Her skin glowing faintly under the moonlight, her features strange yet strangely human. She finished washing, her clothes still torn, but her face cleaner. She turned to him, water dripping from her hair, her voice soft but steady. "You saved me once. You gave me water. I owe you more than I can repay." He shook his head. "Don't thank me. Just leave before they come back." But she didn't move. Her lips trembled as she spoke again. "I can't leave. Not yet. They will catch me out there. Please, Just let me stay until morning." The man stared at her, his jaw tight. He wanted to say no. He wanted to close the door and return to his silence. But outside, he still heard faint echoes, the distant shouts of soldiers searching in the night. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. "If you push me out, they'll find me. If you let me stay, maybe I live." The man's heart battled his mind. Trouble had come to his house, and now it refused to leave. The man did not answer right away. He stood near the door, staring at the girl dripping water onto his floor. His house had always been quiet, safe, and empty, but now it felt alive with danger. He could still hear the faint voices of soldiers outside, carried by the wind. They were not far. He knew if she left now, they would catch her. If she stayed, trouble would stay with her. Lyra's eyes pleaded with him. She hugged her thin arms around herself, shivering in the night air. Her skin, now cleaner, showed bruises and small cuts. She looked fragile, almost breakable. She whispered again, "Please, just until morning. I promise I will go then." The man sighed. He knew he was already too deep. If they searched again and found her here, both of them would suffer. But something inside him refused to throw her back into the night like garbage. He opened the door wider and gestured for her to enter. "Stay in the back room," he said. His voice was stern, but not cruel. "No sound, no light. If they come again, I will deny you are here." Her face lit up, relief washing over her. She bowed her head. "Thank you. I will not cause trouble." She walked quietly across the wooden floor, her wet feet leaving marks behind. He followed her with his eyes, still suspicious. She moved into the back room and sat near the corner where she had first hidden. He gave her an old blanket from the cupboard. She accepted it as if it were gold, wrapping it tightly around her body. For a long time, silence filled the house again. The man sat by the fire, the iron rod still close to his hand. He kept looking at the door, waiting for another knock, waiting for the sound of boots. But the night grew calmer. Only the crackling of the fire and the occasional creak of wood broke the silence. From the back room came a soft voice. "May I speak?" He did not turn. "Speak softly." "I want to thank you. You risked yourself for me. Not many would do that." He kept his eyes on the fire. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because I hate soldiers." She smiled faintly, though he couldn't see. "Even so, I am grateful." After a pause, he asked, "Why water? Out of everything, why beg to wash?" Her voice grew heavy, "Because they wanted me to forget I was alive. They left me in filth, in cages, treated like an animal. When you are covered in dirt and blood for too long, you stop feeling like a person. I just wanted to feel clean once, to remember I am not what they said I was." The man finally turned to look at her. Her face, though tired, carried a strange strength. Her words cut deeper than he expected. He had known war, he had seen suffering, but he had never thought of it like that. "You said you know things," he said. "Things they don't want you to say. What are they?" Her eyes darkened. She looked down at the blanket, her hands clutching it tight. "Secrets, lies about the war, lies about humans. If I speak them out loud, I will not only be hunted, I will be killed without a second thought." He leaned forward, his tone sharp. "Then why tell me? Why risk it?" She lifted her eyes again, her voice trembling but steady. "Because you are human, and humans are the only ones they cannot silence. You are not bound by their rules, not controlled by their caste. You are free. That is why I came here. I believed, even if I was wrong, that a human would listen." The firelight flickered across her face, making her look both strange and familiar at the same time. He studied her carefully. She could be lying, but the fear in her voice was real, and the soldiers outside proved she was valuable to someone. He leaned back, crossing his arms. "You think hiding here will save you? You think I can fight their war for you?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I don't want you to fight for me. I just need a chance to live, to escape far enough that they cannot find me. Please, just let me stay one night. Tomorrow, I will leave." He didn't answer. He closed his eyes, listening to the crackle of the fire. His heart told him he was making a mistake, but his mind kept returning to the image of her washing her face in the barrel, gasping like someone breathing for the first time. Suddenly, a sound broke the calm. The distant bark of an alien beast, sharp and deep, carried through the night air. The girl froze, her body stiff under the blanket. Her voice was only a whisper. "They are still close. They use hunters. Once they smell me, they won't stop." The man stood, grabbing the rod again. He moved to the window, peeking through the narrow gap. In the distance, torches moved like fireflies in the dark. Shapes of soldiers walked slowly, sweeping the area. The beasts with them growled, sniffing the ground. He turned back to her. "They won't stop searching tonight." Her lips trembled. "Then I am dead." For the first time, the man felt anger, not at her, but at the hunters outside who dared to bring their war into his quiet home. His voice hardened. "Not while you're in my house." She stared at him, her eyes wide, as if she could not believe his words. For the first time since she entered, she felt a flicker of safety. But outside, the danger drew closer. The torches outside moved like restless stars in the darkness. The man's grip on the rod grew tighter as he watched shadows shift beyond the window. The alien beasts sniffed the ground, their growls rolling low and deep. Lyra sat frozen in the corner, her blanket clutched so tight it looked like she would tear it apart. Her wide eyes followed the flickering lights, her lips pressing together to stop their trembling. The man stepped away from the window. His voice was firm, almost a whisper. "They're close, too close." Lyra's breathing quickened. "They will smell me. They always do. We have only minutes." The man looked around his small house. He had no weapons except the rod, a hunting knife, and his old rifle, which had not been fired in years. He cursed under his breath. He had chosen this place because it was far from war, far from soldiers. But the war had found him tonight. A knock slammed against the door, heavy and sharp. The sound shook the walls. A deep voice shouted in broken human tongue, "Open! Search now!" The man's heart raced. He looked at Lyra, who shook her head wildly. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "If you open, I die. They will not leave me alive." Another knock came, harder than before. The wooden door groaned under the force. The beast barked, claws scratching the ground outside. The man made a choice. He gestured for Lyra to follow. "Back door. Quiet." She stumbled to her feet, clutching the blanket. They moved quickly through the narrow hallway. The man pushed open the back door, the cool night air rushing in. He led her out into the small yard, then toward the line of trees beyond his house. But before they reached the forest, a voice shouted behind them. The soldiers had seen them. Torches turned in their direction, beams of light piercing the night. The beasts howled, charging forward. "Run!" the man shouted. He grabbed Lyra's wrist and pulled her into the trees. The forest swallowed them, branches snapping under their feet, roots catching their steps. Lyra tried to keep up, but her body was weak. She stumbled often, and each time the man dragged her up, refusing to leave her behind. The shouts of soldiers grew louder, closer. The beasts crashed through the trees, their growls shaking the night air. Lyra gasped for breath. "Leave me. You can escape alone." "Shut up and run." The man growled. His face was set with determination. He would not let her be taken, not after she had begged him with such broken fear in her voice. They reached a small clearing. The moonlight spilled onto the ground, silver against the grass. The man stopped, scanning the area. He knew the forest well. Ahead, hidden among the rocks, was an old hunter's shelter, half buried and forgotten. "This way," he said. He pulled her toward the rocks. Behind them, the soldiers shouted, their torches glowing like fire through the trees. The beasts were closing in, their snarls echoing in the clearing. The man shoved aside the brush covering the entrance of the shelter. A narrow hole yawned open in the earth. "Get inside," he ordered. Lyra hesitated, her body trembling. "What about you?" "I'll follow. Move." She slid inside, crawling down into the darkness. The man crouched behind her, pulling the brush back over the hole just as the glow of torches reached the clearing. He pressed his body against the earth, holding his breath. Lyra huddled beside him in the dark, clutching his arm, her fingers cold and shaking. Above them, boots stomped on the ground. The soldiers spread out, their voices sharp and impatient. The beasts sniffed the clearing, growling low. One beast barked, its claws scraping against the rocks above their hiding place. Lyra buried her face against his shoulder, trying to stay silent. The man gritted his teeth, his hand gripping the knife at his side. If they found the hole, he would have to fight. Minutes dragged like hours. The soldiers shouted at the beasts, pulling them away. Slowly, the footsteps faded into the distance, the glow of torches sinking back into the trees. The man exhaled, his chest heavy. He looked at Lyra. Her face was pale in the faint moonlight that filtered through the cracks, her eyes wet with silent tears. "They're gone. For now," he whispered. She nodded weakly, but her voice broke. "They will not stop. They never stop." The man leaned back against the dirt wall of the shelter. He had never wanted this. He had chosen a quiet life away from all of it. But tonight, his choices no longer mattered. Trouble had come, and it was not leaving. Lyra's hand gripped his sleeve, her voice soft but steady. "I didn't lie to you. They want me because of what I know, because if I speak, they lose power. I am only alive because they want me silent." He looked at her for a long moment. Her fear was real. Her desperation was real, and now, because he had chosen not to abandon her, her enemies were his enemies too. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly. The sound of distant soldiers still echoed in the night, but he knew one thing with certainty. If they wanted to take her, they would have to go through him first. The night dragged on inside the hidden shelter. The air was damp, smelling of soil and old leaves. The man sat with his back against the wall, the hunting knife still in his grip, while Lyra curled against the other side, her blanket pulled tight around her body. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Their breathing was slow, tense, and every small sound outside made their hearts jump. At last, Lyra whispered, "You should have left me. Now they will hunt you too." The man's jaw tightened. He didn't look at her, only at the narrow crack above them where faint moonlight slipped through. "I don't abandon people," he said. "Not even aliens." Her lips trembled. She wanted to say more, but the words stayed stuck in her throat. She had expected humans to fear her, to hate her, maybe even to sell her for coin. Yet this one had risked his life twice already. It made her chest ache in a way she didn't understand. The silence stretched, but it was not calm. Outside, the growls of the beasts rose again, farther away this time, then faded. The soldiers were still searching. The man knew they could not stay here until morning. If the beasts returned and sniffed closer, the hiding place would not hold. He turned his head toward her. "We move before sunrise. If we wait, they'll sweep the forest again." Her eyes widened. "Where will we go?" "There's a river past the ridge. Fast water. It can hide our trail from the beasts. If we reach it, we might lose them." Lyra's throat felt dry. The thought of running again made her body ache, but she nodded. "I'll follow." Hours passed slowly until the first hint of dawn touched the sky. The man pushed aside the brush covering their shelter and peered out. The forest was quiet, but too quiet. He motioned for her to come. They stepped carefully into the pale light. The air was cold, their breaths misting as they moved. Every step felt loud, even though they tried to stay silent. The forest floor crackled with twigs and dry leaves, and Lyra flinched at every sound. The ridge was steep, and she struggled to climb it. Her legs trembled, and her arms shook as she pulled herself up. Twice she slipped, and both times the man grabbed her arm before she fell. He didn't speak, but each time he pulled her up, his grip was strong, steady, refusing to let her go. When they finally reached the top, the river roared below them, silver in the growing light. The water moved fast, smashing against rocks and carrying branches downstream. Lyra stared at it with wide eyes. "You want to cross that?" The man nodded. "The current will wipe out your scent. The soldiers won't follow in deep water." She hugged her blanket tighter. "I can't swim." His eyes met hers, calm but hard. "Then hold on to me. If you let go, you die." She swallowed hard but nodded. They climbed down toward the riverbank. Just as they reached the edge, shouts rang out behind them. Torches flared in the trees. The soldiers had found their trail again. The beasts barked, their voices wild and hungry. "Go!" the man shouted. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her into the water. The river was icy, the current pulling at their legs instantly. Lyra gasped, the cold stealing her breath. She clung to his arm, terrified the water would swallow her. The man pushed forward, step by step, until the riverbed dropped away. They were swept into the current, carried downstream. The water crashed against them, spinning them, dragging them under. Lyra choked, her fingers clawing desperately at his sleeve. He tightened his grip, wrapping an arm around her. "Hold on," he shouted through the roar. The current smashed them into rocks, tore at their clothes, but he fought against it with every muscle, kicking hard to stay afloat. Lyra buried her face against his shoulder, too afraid to look up. Behind them, the soldiers reached the bank. Some shouted orders, others pointed, but none dared follow into the raging water. The beasts barked from the edge, pacing, their teeth flashing in frustration. The river carried the man and Lyra farther and farther, until the soldiers were only faint shadows against the dawn light. At last, the current slowed near a bend where fallen trees made a natural barrier. The man dragged them to shore, pulling Lyra onto the mud. She collapsed, coughing, her whole body shaking. He lay beside her, chest heaving, every muscle burning from the fight against the river. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They just breathed, alive but exhausted. Finally, Lyra lifted her head, her voice weak. "You should have let me drown. You risked everything again for me." He turned his face toward her, his eyes sharp. "Stop saying that. I don't save someone just to let them die the next minute." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were not only from fear. She had never known mercy like this, never felt worth saving. She pressed a hand to her chest, whispering, "Why? Why help me?" The forest around the river was still dripping with mist when the man helped Lyra back onto her feet. Her clothes clung to her thin body, wet and heavy, but her eyes were alert now, shining with something between fear and hope. The horns in the distance echoed again, carried through the trees. The soldiers were not far. "We can't stay here," the man said. His voice was steady, though his muscles still burned from fighting the river. "They'll follow along the banks. We need higher ground." Lyra nodded weakly. She leaned on him as they moved into the forest, her steps unsteady. The wet earth sucked at their feet, and branches scratched their skin, but they pressed forward. The man guided her along narrow paths only hunters would know, places where the soil was firm and the shadows thick. As they climbed toward the ridge, Lyra whispered, "Why do they hunt me so hard? Why not just let me vanish?" The man glanced at her. "Because you're not just some runaway. You said you know things. What kind of things?" She stopped walking. Her chest rose and fell with sharp breaths. For a long moment, she did not answer. Then she looked straight at him, her eyes wide and unblinking. "My people built this war on lies," she said. "They told everyone that humans were weak, unworthy, and dangerous. They taught that your kind must never be trusted. But it is not true. Humans are stronger than they admit, stronger than even they fear. And I saw proof." The man frowned. "Proof?" Her voice shook. "I was a servant in the high halls. I heard the generals speak. I saw their hidden records. Humans were never supposed to lose. The war was not fair. It was poisoned before it even began. They spread sickness, twisted the air, broke treaties in secret. They turned the galaxy against you because they feared what you could become." The man's chest tightened. He had always known something was wrong, but hearing it from her made the anger burn sharper. "And you ran because you know this?" She nodded. "Yes. If I speak, if I show what I've seen, their whole rule shatters. That is why they hunt me. I am a voice they cannot allow to live." He stared at her, silent. The truth in her voice was heavy, and it pulled at him in ways he didn't want to admit. She was not just a frightened girl anymore. She carried something far bigger than herself, something that could shift the balance between their peoples. Before he could answer, the sound of snapping branches cut through the air. Voices shouted. The soldiers were closer. The man grabbed her hand. "Move!" They ran through the trees, their feet slamming against roots and stones. The forest grew darker, thicker, but the enemy pushed in behind them, torches glowing between the trunks. The beasts barked, their claws tearing through the undergrowth. Lyra stumbled, nearly falling, but the man caught her. He pulled her close and pushed them both behind a fallen log. They crouched low, listening as soldiers passed only a few feet away. Lyra pressed her face against his arm, her breath hot and fast. The man held still, his hand wrapped over hers to keep her steady. The soldiers' voices grew faint again, and soon the sound of boots drifted deeper into the forest. She lifted her head, whispering, "They will not stop. You see it now. They will burn the forest if they must." The man's jaw tightened. He looked at her and said, "Then we stop running. We find another way." Her eyes widened. "You would fight them? Alone?" "Not alone," he said firmly. "You know things they fear, and I know how to make them bleed." For the first time, she saw not just a quiet man hiding from war, but a fighter hidden beneath the silence. He was not like the others who looked at her as weak. His eyes burned with defiance, the kind of fire that could stand against storms. They moved again, this time slower, weaving through the ridges until they reached a cave hidden by thick vines. The man led her inside, the air cool and still. He lit a small flame with flint, its glow spilling over the stone walls. Lyra sank down against the wall, exhausted. She hugged her knees, her voice trembling. "Why help me?" You could walk away, vanish into the forest, and they would never know. He crouched in front of her, his eyes steady. "Because I've seen too many die for nothing. Because I'm tired of hiding while they destroy everything. And because you came to me. That means something." Her throat tightened. She looked away, but her eyes glistened with tears. "You don't understand. If you stay with me, you'll never be free again." He almost smiled, though it was a hard smile. Freedom doesn't mean much if you live it as a coward. The cave fell silent, except for the crackle of the small fire. Lyra's heart pounded as she studied him. No one had ever spoken like this to her. No one had looked at her as more than a burden. She wanted to believe his words, to believe that standing with him meant safety. Outside, the forest shook with distant horns again. The man stood, gripping the knife tighter. His voice was low but strong. "Rest while you can. Tomorrow, we stop running. Tomorrow, we fight back." Lyra stared at him in awe, her chest heavy with fear and hope tangled together. She realized he was no longer just a stranger who... The cave was silent, except for the soft crackle of the small fire. Lyra sat with her knees pulled close, her silver hair hanging damp over her shoulders. The man stood near the entrance, his knife in hand, watching the shadows outside. Dawn was coming, but the forest was still alive with danger. Horns echoed in the distance, and the bark of the beasts carried on the cold wind. "They will find us," Lyra whispered. Her voice was soft but heavy. "They always find me." The man didn't turn. His eyes stayed on the tree line beyond the vines. "Let them come." She looked at him with wide eyes. "You can't fight them all." "No," he admitted, "but I can make them bleed, enough to make them fear following further." Lyra's hands tightened on the blanket around her. She wanted to believe him, but she had seen too many strong ones fall. Her people, her family, even strangers who once tried to hide her. Yet something about his voice felt different. It wasn't pride. It was certainty, like he had already decided the outcome. As the first pale light of morning touched the sky, the soldiers came. Their torches glowed in the distance, and their beasts pulled at chains, growling low. The man motioned for Lyra to stay back. "Whatever happens, stay low. Don't move unless I tell you." Her chest tightened. She wanted to protest, but the words caught in her throat. She nodded instead, her eyes locked on him as he stepped outside. The soldiers reached the clearing, at least a dozen of them, armored and armed, with two beasts snarling at their feet. Their leader, tall and broad, raised his weapon and shouted, "Human, hand over the girl. Do this, and we let you live." The man's voice was calm, steady as stone. "You've searched all night. If you want her, come and take her." The soldiers roared in anger, rushing forward. The beasts lunged first, teeth bared. The man moved fast, quicker than Lyra had ever imagined. His knife flashed, striking the first beast across the throat. It yelped, collapsing to the ground. The second leapt, claws wide, but he rolled aside, stabbing upward into its belly. Blood sprayed across the dirt. The soldiers shouted louder, firing shots, rushing with blades. The man grabbed one fallen torch and hurled it into the dry brush. Flames leapt high, smoke curling through the clearing. Confusion spread as the fire grew, crackling and choking the air. He fought like someone who had nothing to lose. His iron rod struck against armored heads, his knife cut through weak joints in their plates. He moved with raw fury, every strike meant to kill. Lyra crouched at the cave entrance, her heart racing. She had never seen such defiance. One man against many, yet he did not break. She wanted to scream, to run to him, but her body froze in awe and terror. The leader of the soldiers advanced, larger than the rest, his blade glowing with strange energy. He struck hard, forcing the man back step by step. Sparks flew as metal clashed against the iron rod. The man's arm shook under the force, but his eyes stayed sharp. "You fight for nothing," the leader snarled. "She is nothing. Give her to us and walk away." The man gritted his teeth. "She's worth more than all of you." With a roar, he slammed the rod against the leader's blade, twisting and driving his knife into the alien's chest. The leader gasped, stumbling back, blood staining his armor. He fell to the ground, lifeless. The other soldiers froze. Their leader was dead. The fire raged higher around them, smoke burning their eyes. Fear spread like a wave. One by one, they backed away, dragging the wounded, pulling the beasts' bodies aside. Their shouts turned to retreat. Soon, only silence and smoke filled the clearing. The man stood, chest heaving, blood staining his arms. He turned back toward the cave. Lyra rushed to him, her eyes wide with shock and tears. You did it. You drove them away." He dropped the knife, his shoulders heavy. "For now." She grabbed his arm, holding it tight. "No, more than that. You showed them you are not weak. You showed me I was right to come to you." He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. "They'll be back, stronger, with more men." Lyra shook her head. "Then I'll keep running, but not alone anymore. Not if you'll walk with me." The man stared at her, silent. He had chosen solitude for years, hiding from war and people alike. Yet this alien girl, dirty and broken, had dragged him back into a fight he thought he had left behind. And somehow, he didn't regret it. "You carry something dangerous," he said slowly, "a truth that could burn worlds." She lifted her chin, her eyes steady now. "Then let it burn. But I will not be silent. Not with you beside me." For the first time, he let out a faint smile. It was tired, grim, but real. He nodded once. The smoke thinned, the fire dying down as the sun rose higher. The clearing smelled of ash and blood, the ground littered with the remains of the battle. Yet in that moment, Lyra felt something she had not felt since her world was destroyed. Hope. She looked at him and whispered, "You saved me. But it's more than that."